Ji-won stood in the underground facility, staring at the metal wall in front of her. The wall was cold and gray, just like everything else in this place. She had been working here for 30 years now, ever since she was a young woman fresh out of engineering school. Now her hair had streaks of gray and her hands shook slightly when she held her tools. Above them, 50 kilometers up, the barrier hummed with alien energy. It surrounded the entire solar system like an invisible prison wall. No ship could leave. No message could get through. Earth was alone, and it had been alone for 50 years. Ji-won remembered the stories her grandmother told her. Stories about the day the aliens came. Everyone had been so excited. First contact with alien life. Humanity would join the great galactic community. They would trade, learn, and explore the stars together. But the aliens looked at humanity and saw something different. They saw violence. They saw chaos. They saw a species too dangerous to be allowed among the stars. The Galactic Council held a meeting. 17 species voted. 15 said yes to the quarantine. Only 2 voted to give humanity a chance. It didn't matter. The decision was made. Giant ships arrived at the edge of the solar system. They were massive, bigger than cities. They worked for 3 months building the barrier. When they finished, they left. Earth was sealed inside a cage made of energy that humans couldn't break or pass through. Ji-won, are you listening? Minho's voice broke through her thoughts. She turned to face him. Minho was younger than her, maybe 40 years old. He commanded what was left of Earth's space fleet. 600 ships that could do nothing but fly around inside their prison. He wore his uniform every day, even though there was no war to fight and no enemy to face except the barrier itself. Sorry, Ji-won said. I was thinking about the old days. We all do that, Minho replied. He looked tired. Everyone looked tired these days. But I need you focused. The council wants an update on your project. The project. That's what they called it. The secret work that gave humanity its only hope. Ji-won walked to her workstation and pulled up the plans on her screen. Lines of light showed complex mathematics and engineering designs. This was her life's work. A new type of engine that could break through barriers that shouldn't be breakable. We're close, she said. Maybe 5 more years. 10 at most. Minho nodded slowly. 5 years. We might not have 5 years, Ji-won. She knew what he meant. Resources were running low. Earth had 7 billion people, and they were all trapped on one planet and a few colonies in the solar system. They couldn't expand, couldn't get new materials from outside. The barrier let sunlight through, but nothing else. Food was rationed now. Water was recycled again and again. Fights broke out in the big cities over basic supplies. The government tried to keep order, but it was getting harder every year. We'll make it work, Ji-won said, though she wasn't sure she believed it. Across the city, in a tall building that still had power, Hana sat in a dark room. She was watching old videos from 50 years ago. She had watched them 1,000 times, but she always came back to them. The video showed a massive chamber. Thousands of aliens sat in seats arranged in circles. They looked like insects, crystals, clouds of gas, and things that had no names in human languages. At the center stood a human woman in a formal suit. She was speaking, pleading. We are not what you think we are, the woman said. Her voice was strong, but Hana could hear the fear underneath. Yes, we have wars. Yes, we have violence. But we also have art, love, compassion, and the desire to be better. Give us a chance. Let us prove ourselves. The camera panned across the alien faces. Some looked bored. Some looked disgusted. A few looked curious, but only a few. Then the vote happened. One by one, the species declared their choice. Yes to quarantine. Yes to the cage. Yes to leaving humanity locked away until they evolved into something better. Hana had been there that day. She was part of the diplomatic team, just a junior aide. She remembered crying when the vote finished. She remembered the feeling of the world ending. Now she was old. Her body hurt when she moved. Her eyes needed strong glasses to see, but she remembered everything about that day with perfect clarity. They were afraid of us, she whispered to the empty room. They looked at humans and saw themselves in the ancient past. They saw the violence they used to have before they became civilized, and they couldn't stand it. But Hana knew something the aliens didn't know. When you put a human in a cage, they don't become gentle. They become focused. They become determined. They start looking for ways out. The door opened behind her. A young man entered. He wore a simple uniform with an intelligence division badge. Ambassador Hana, he said respectfully. She wasn't really an ambassador anymore, but people still called her that.
I have the latest report from the monitoring stations. What did you hear, Junho?
She asked. Junho pulled out a datapad. The aliens are still watching us. 3 observer ships at the barrier edge. They send reports back to the council every month. According to the transmissions we've intercepted, they think we're getting weaker. They think the quarantine is working. Hana smiled. It wasn't a nice smile. Good, let them think that. There's more, Junho continued. We picked up another transmission. This one was different. It sounded like curiosity. One of the younger species asking questions about humans, wanting to know more about our history, our culture. Which species? Hana asked. We're not sure. The encryption was different. But they're interested in us. That's something. Hana stood up slowly, her joints aching. She walked to the window and looked out at the city. Lights flickered in some buildings. Others were dark to save power. In the distance, she could see the launch facility where Jiwan worked. 50 years, Hana said quietly. 50 years since they put us in this cage. They thought we would learn our lesson. Become peaceful. Beg them to let us out. She turned to look at Junho. But we didn't beg, did we? No, Ambassador. We built. That's right, we built. And soon, very soon, we're going to show them what humans do when you try to chain them down. Deep in the underground facility, Jiwan returned to her work. Her hands moved over the controls with practiced ease. The engine design rotated on her screen, beautiful and complex. It used principles of physics that the galactic species had declared impossible. They had laws against even researching this type of technology. But humans weren't part of the galactic community. The laws didn't apply to them. And being locked in a cage meant they had nothing to lose by trying the impossible. Jiwan thought about her granddaughter. The girl was 15 now, studying engineering just like Jiwan had. She wanted to be a pilot. She dreamed of flying through the stars, visiting other worlds, seeing things no human had ever seen. I'll give you those stars, Jiwan whispered. I promise. The work continued. Day after day, year after year, thousands of engineers, scientists, and workers all focused on one goal: break the chains, reach the stars, show the galaxy that humanity would not be kept in a cage. Outside the barrier, the alien observer ships floated in the darkness of space. Inside their ships, alien crews watched Earth through sensors and cameras. They wrote reports about declining human populations, failing infrastructure, and decreasing energy outputs. They saw what they expected to see. A caged species slowly dying. They didn't see the truth. They didn't see the fires burning in underground facilities. They didn't see the determination in human eyes. They didn't see the future being built in secret places. The galaxy had made its choice 50 years ago. They chose to chain Earth. Soon, very soon, they would learn what that choice had cost them. 35 years had passed since Jiwan stood in that underground facility, making promises to herself. Now she was an old woman, her body weak and her hands barely able to hold a cup of water. But her mind was still sharp and her work was finally complete. Daeho stood beside her hospital bed holding her hand. He was her grandson, 23 years old, with strong shoulders and steady eyes. He wore a pilot's uniform, dark blue with silver wings on the collar. It's ready, grandmother, he said softly. The engine works. All 12 ships are equipped and ready to launch. Jiwan smiled. Her lips were dry and cracked. Then go, break the cage. Show them what we've become. I'll make you proud, Daeho promised. You already have, Jiwan whispered. Then her eyes closed and she slept. She would never wake up again. But she died knowing that her work had succeeded. 3 days later, Daeho sat in the cockpit of his ship. It was called the Pioneer, a name chosen carefully. This would be the first human ship to leave the solar system in 85 years. Around him, 11 other ships floated in formation. Each one carried a crew of 20. Each one had an experimental quantum fold drive built into its core. The drive that Jiwan spent her entire life designing. All ships report ready. Yoonji's voice came through the radio. She was the weapons officer on Ship 3. A woman with short black hair and scars on her arms from testing equipment. Weapon systems armed and operational. Daeho nodded to himself. They had weapons too. Not just any weapons, but designs that used technologies the galaxy had banned thousands of years ago. Nuclear pulse drives, kinetic kill vehicles, relativistic missiles, things the civilized species called barbaric and primitive. But primitive weapons still killed, sometimes better than advanced ones. Intelligence confirms observer ships at the barrier edge, Junho's voice added. He was aboard the command ship, his hair now gray, but his voice still strong. 3 vessels. Same as always. They haven't noticed our launch yet. They will soon, Deho said. He looked at the barrier above them. From here it looked like a shimmer in space, like heat waves rising from hot ground. But it was strong enough to stop any normal ship. They weren't normal ships anymore. All vessels, this is Pioneer Actual. Deho spoke into the radio. 85 years ago, they locked us in a cage. They said we were too dangerous, too violent, too primitive for the stars. Today we prove them right about one thing. We are dangerous. Engage quantum fold drives on my mark. His finger hovered over the control. His heart pounded in his chest. Everything humanity had worked for came down to this moment. Mark. The drives activated. Reality twisted around the 12 ships. Space folded in ways that shouldn't be possible. The barrier, designed to stop ships moving through normal space, suddenly didn't know what to do with ships that moved through folded dimensions. The Pioneer lurched. Alarm screamed. Deho's stomach felt like it was turning inside out. Colors that didn't exist flashed across his vision. Then suddenly everything was calm. He looked at his instruments. They showed open space. No barrier. He looked out the window and saw stars that hadn't been visible from Earth in 85 years. We're through, he whispered. Then louder, we're through. All ships, report status. One by one, the other ships confirmed. All 12 had made it. They were outside the barrier. They were free. Behind them, inside the barrier, alarms began blaring across every human facility. People ran to observation stations. They looked at the sensors and couldn't believe what they showed. Ships had left. The cage was broken. On Earth, in a government building, people started crying. Some from joy, some from fear, some from relief so deep it hurt. But outside the barrier, the real work was beginning. The alien observer ships detected the breach within seconds. Their sensors screamed warnings. Impossible readings flooded their systems. Ships had appeared where ships couldn't be. Technology had done what technology shouldn't do. Inside the lead observer ship, a Vrix commander stared at her displays. She was insect-like, with multiple eyes and clicking mandibles. Her species had voted yes to the quarantine all those years ago. Send immediate alert to the Council, she clicked in her language. The humans have escaped containment. Repeat, containment is breached. But before her communications officer could send the message, 12 new contacts appeared on their sensors. Human ships surrounding them in a perfect formation. Weapons charged and ready. Deho's voice came over all frequencies, speaking in the common galactic language that Junho had taught him. Attention, Vrix vessels. You have watched us for 85 years. You have studied us like animals in a cage. You have reported our suffering to your masters. Now you will take a new message back to the Council. Tell them this, humanity is free. We will not ask permission to travel the stars. We will not beg for acceptance. We are coming, and nothing you build can stop us. The Vrix commander wanted to respond, to threaten to do something, but 12 human ships had weapons locked on her 3 vessels. Weapons that her sensors couldn't fully identify. Weapons that looked primitive but somehow also terrifying. She said nothing. She simply recorded the message and began calculating the fastest route back to Council space. Let them go, Yunji said over the radio. Let them carry the message, Deho agreed. The Vrix ships turned and ran, their engines burning at maximum as they fled toward the nearest hyperspace lane. The 12 human ships hung in space, finally free of their cage. The crews cheered. Some laughed. Some cried. They had done what seemed impossible, but Junho's voice cut through the celebration. All ships, be advised. We're picking up transmissions across all galactic frequencies. The news is spreading fast. The Council is aware of the breach. They're already calling emergency meetings. Let them meet, Deho said. Let them talk. Let them be afraid. While they sit in their chambers and debate what to do, we'll be spreading across the stars. And that's exactly what humanity did. The 12 ships split up, each heading to a different nearby star system. They carried fabrication equipment, supplies, and the knowledge to build more ships. Within 6 months, there were 50 human ships exploring the galaxy. Within a year, there were 200. They didn't move through the old hyperspace lanes that the galaxy controlled. They used quantum fold drives that jumped them through folded space, bypassing all the checkpoints and border stations. The galaxy watched in growing panic as humanity spread like wildfire. Not attacking, but present. Observing, recording. Building bases on unclaimed worlds and asteroids. In the Grand Council Chamber, the same place where humanity's fate was sealed 85 years ago, emergency meetings happened every day. The Vrix Queen stood at the center, her voice clicking with anger. We must destroy them immediately. Send the full fleet. Eliminate every human ship before they grow stronger. But a crystalline therm representative shook with uncertainty. Our intelligence says they have weapons we don't understand. Technologies we banned. Nuclear weapons. Kinetic bombardment. Things we abandoned as barbaric. Barbaric weapons are still just weapons, the Vrix Queen clicked. Our advanced technology will defeat their primitive tools. But a gaseous Kelth drifted forward, its voice like wind through caves. I am not so certain. Primitive does not mean ineffective, and these humans have had 85 years to innovate while we grew comfortable. They are not the same species we caged. The debate raged for days. Some species wanted immediate war. Others wanted to negotiate. A few, the younger species who hadn't voted on the original quarantine, quietly suggested that maybe humanity deserved their freedom. Meanwhile, human ships continued to spread. They visited worlds that had never seen humans before. Sometimes they were met with fear, sometimes with curiosity, but always they delivered the same message: we are humanity. We were imprisoned by the Council for 85 years. We broke free. We ask nothing from you except to be left alone to explore as we wish. But if you threaten us, if you try to cage us again, you will learn what we became in the darkness. The galaxy was changing. The old order, the comfortable peace enforced by the Council, was cracking. And humanity, the species that was supposed to stay locked away, was now free and showing no signs of backing down. Deho sat in the Pioneer's cockpit, looking at a star map. Red dots showed human ships. Blue dots showed alien territories. The red was spreading, growing, reaching further every day. He thought about his grandmother, lying in her grave on Earth. She had died before seeing this. But her engine, her impossible dream, had made it all real. Thank you, grandmother, he whispered to the stars. We're free. Sujin stood on the bridge of her flagship, the Remembrance, watching the display screen in front of her. She was 50 years old now, with gray streaks in her black hair and lines around her eyes from years of command. Before her stretched a map of local space, showing hundreds of human ships spread across dozens of star systems. 3 years had passed since Deho broke through the barrier. 3 years of expansion, building, and preparation. Humanity now had 800 ships, 12 colonies outside the solar system, and a fleet that grew stronger every day. But they hadn't fired a shot in anger yet. That was about to change. Admiral, Hyejin said from her science station. She was younger than Sujin, maybe 35, with sharp eyes that missed nothing. We've completed the analysis of the captured Vrix database. You need to see this. Sujin walked over to Hyejin's station. The scientist pulled up files on her screen. They showed medical records, genetic samples, and research data. All of it was about humans. What am I looking at? Sujin asked. The real reason they caged us, Hyejin said, her voice tight with controlled anger. The quarantine wasn't just about fear. They were studying us, Admiral. For 85 years, they monitored our biology, our genetics, our adaptation. The Vrix wanted to know why humans could survive in so many different environments. The Therm wanted to understand our creative thinking. The Kelth needed our immune system adaptability. She pulled up another file. They were harvesting our genetic information to save their own dying species. While we starved and suffered in the cage, they were using us as lab rats. Sujin felt cold rage building in her chest. She had fought in the resource wars on Earth. She had watched children die from lack of medicine. She had seen cities go dark because there wasn't enough power. And all that time, the aliens were studying them like specimens. Send this to all human ships, Sujin said quietly. Every captain, every crew, every colonist needs to know the truth. And prepare a message for broadcast on all galactic frequencies. 20 minutes later, Sujin sat in front of a camera. Behind her, the bridge crew worked at their stations. She wore her admiral's uniform, crisp and clean, with Earth's flag on her shoulder. People of the galaxy, she began, her voice calm but hard. My name is Admiral Sujin of the human fleet. For 85 years you watched as your council imprisoned my species. You told us it was for our own good, that we were too violent, too dangerous to join galactic society. She paused, letting the words sink in. But we discovered the truth. The quarantine wasn't about protecting the galaxy from us. It was about protecting the lie. You studied us. You harvested our genetic information. You used our suffering for your benefit. While human children died, you took notes. The camera zoomed closer to her face. Now I have a question for each species that voted to cage us. What price should you pay for 85 years of imprisonment? For thousands of deaths that didn't need to happen? For using us like animals in your experiments? She leaned forward. I'll tell you the price. You will face us, not as lab specimens, not as caged primitives, but as equals. And if you refuse, you will face us as something worse. You will face us as enemies. The broadcast ended. Within hours, it spread across every corner of the galaxy. Billions of beings watched it. Some in fear, some in shame, some in anger. The Vrix Queen called for war immediately. Send the fleet, she ordered. 10,000 ships. Crush them before they grow stronger. But the Therm Council hesitated. Perhaps we should negotiate. Offer reparations. Negotiate? The Vrix Queen's mandibles clicked with rage. They are primitives. We have advanced technology, superior numbers, and thousands of years of experience. We will end this quickly. Meanwhile, human ships moved to specific positions throughout the local sector, not attacking, just present. At the borders of every species that voted yes to the quarantine 85 years ago. Nari commanded one of those ships, the Indomitable, stationed at the edge of Vrix space. She was 38 years old, short but strong, with eyes that never stopped analyzing everything around her. Before becoming a captain, she had studied military history from Earth's violent past. Everything from ancient warfare to the last resource conflicts before the quarantine. Captain, her tactical officer said, Vrix fleet approaching. Count is over 800 vessels. They're not hiding their approach. They want us to see them coming, Nari smiled. It wasn't a nice smile. Good. Pride makes for poor strategy. All ships prepare for combat. Execute Plan Hammer. The Vrix fleet came fast, their ships gleaming with advanced technology. They expected the human ships to run. Instead, the human vessels spread out and activated weapons that made the Vrix sensors scream warnings. Nuclear-tipped missiles launched by the hundreds. Kinetic kill vehicles accelerated to relativistic speeds. Electromagnetic pulse weapons charged. These were technologies the galaxy had abandoned as crude and barbaric. But crude weapons still killed, and barbaric tactics still won battles. The Vrix fleet tried to intercept the missiles with energy shields and point defense lasers. It worked at first. Then the nuclear weapons started detonating in patterns, creating overlapping zones of electromagnetic pulse that fried the Vrix ship's delicate electronics. Their shields are down, Nari's tactical officer shouted. Multiple enemy vessels disabled. Hit them with kinetic weapons, Nari ordered. No mercy. No hesitation. They caged us for 85 years. Today they learn what that cost them. The kinetic weapons struck like the fist of an angry god. Solid metal projectiles moving at a significant fraction of light speed. When they hit a Vrix ship, they didn't just damage it. They vaporized it. The advanced armor, designed to stop energy weapons, did nothing against simple mass moving at impossible speeds. In 10 minutes, 300 Vrix ships were destroyed or disabled. The rest tried to retreat, but human ships followed, hunting them down one by one. On Vrix Prime, the homeworld of the insectoid species, the Queen watched the battle reports with growing horror. Impossible. The humans should have lost. They should have run. They were primitives with crude weapons, but those crude weapons were tearing her fleet apart. Similar battles happened across a dozen star systems. Everywhere the old Council species tried to fight, they met human fleets that fought with tactics and weapons they hadn't seen in millennia. Tactics they had forgotten how to counter. In the underground colonies of Vrix-controlled worlds, a different kind of battle was beginning. Sunwoo moved through the dark tunnels, leading a group of resistance fighters. These weren't humans. They were members of younger species that the Vrix controlled, species that had been watching humanity's fight with great interest. The supply depot is ahead, Sunwoo whispered. He was 29 years old, trained in guerrilla warfare tactics that Earth's armies had perfected during the resource wars. Remember, no killing unless necessary. We're here to disrupt their logistics, not to become murderers. One of the alien resistance fighters, a being with scales and multiple arms, clicked nervously. The humans could kill them all. Why do you hold back? Sunwoo looked at the alien fighter. Because killing everyone isn't the goal. Justice is the goal. and justice means being better than those who wronged you. They hit the depot fast and hard, disabling the guards with stun weapons and destroying supplies. Then they broadcast a message to the local population. The Vrix Empire is falling. The old order is crumbling. Rise up, take your freedom. Humanity stands with you. It was happening across Vrix space. Rebellion, uprising, chaos. Species that had been controlled by the Vrix for generations suddenly saw opportunity. If humanity could break free from the Council, maybe they could too. The war lasted 3 months. Not 3 years. Not 3 decades. 3 months. The Vrix fleet, once the largest military force in the galaxy, was reduced to a fraction of its original size. Their colonies were in rebellion. Their economy was collapsing. And human ships sat at the edge of their home system, weapons charged, waiting. The Therm tried to negotiate, sending envoys to human ships with offers of peace. But Sujin sent them back with a simple message. You will wait. When we are ready to talk, we will call you. The Kelth simply withdrew, pulling their ships and people back to their core worlds. They made no threats. They made no offers. They simply acknowledged that they had lost. In the council chamber, the species that once ruled the galaxy sat in shocked silence. The young species, those who hadn't voted for the quarantine, watched with a mixture of fear and excitement. The old order was dying in front of their eyes. Aboard the Remembrance, Sujin stood looking at the tactical display. Red icons showed human positions throughout the sector. Gray icons showed defeated or neutral alien forces. The map had changed completely in just 3 months. Hyejin approached her. Admiral, we're receiving surrender offers from 17 different species. They're asking for terms. Not yet, Sujin said. First, they learn. They learn what it feels like to wait, to wonder if death is coming, to have no control over their fate. They gave us 85 years of that feeling. We'll give them 3 months. She turned to face the bridge crew. But make sure they know one thing. We're not monsters. We're not going to exterminate them. We're just going to make sure they never forget what they did, and that they never do it again. The galaxy held its breath. Young-Ho walked through the rebuilt government building in Seoul. The city had power again. Full power, not the rationed electricity of the quarantine years. The streets outside were lit up at night. Children played in parks without fear of resource shortages. Earth was healing, and it was doing so quickly. But Young-Ho couldn't enjoy the recovery. He had too much work to do. As Earth's first president of interstellar affairs, he carried the weight of deciding humanity's future relationship with the galaxy. His assistant met him at the office door. Mr. President, the delegates are waiting. All 15 species that voted yes to the quarantine have sent representatives. They're in the conference hall. Keep them waiting, Young-Ho said. He was 60 years old with white hair and a face that showed every hard year of the quarantine. He had lost his wife to disease during the resource wars. His son had died fighting over water rights in the African continent. He had reasons to be angry. They all did, but anger alone wouldn't build a future. He entered his office and pulled up the latest reports. The war had been over for 2 months now. Human casualties had been surprisingly light. Only 1,200 dead, 3,000 wounded. The galaxy had expected humanity to be brutal, to match the Vrix's numbers with genocidal fury. Instead, humanity had been precise, tactical. They destroyed military targets and disabled enemy ships but avoided civilian casualties wherever possible. When Vrix colonies surrendered, human forces provided medical aid and food supplies. When rebellion broke out on Therm worlds, human advisors helped the rebels establish fair governments. It confused the galaxy. Primitives weren't supposed to show restraint. Violent species weren't supposed to care about civilian lives, but humans remembered what it felt like to be powerless, to be hungry, to watch loved ones die. They wouldn't inflict that on others if they could avoid it. Young-Ho's screen showed another report, this one from Nari. Her ship was still positioned at the edge of Vrix space, maintaining the blockade. The Vrix military was shattered, but small groups still hid in asteroid fields and outer system bases. Admiral Nari reports the last Vrix holdout has surrendered, his assistant said. The Vrix Queen is requesting an audience with you directly. Denied, Young-Ho said. She can wait with the other delegates. 2 hours later, Young-Ho entered the conference hall. 15 groups of alien delegates sat around a massive table. They represented the species that had voted to cage humanity 85 years ago. Some looked defiant. Some looked afraid. Most just looked tired. The Vrix Queen sat at one end, her insectoid body rigid with barely controlled fury. Beside her, a therm crystalline representative flickered with nervous light. The Kelth delegate was a cloud of gas contained in a pressure suit. Young-Ho sat at the head of the table. He didn't speak immediately. He just looked at each delegate one by one, letting the silence stretch. Finally, the Vrix Queen clicked her mandibles. "You called us here. State your terms, human. Terms," Young-Ho said softly. "You think this is a negotiation? What else would it be?" The Queen clicked. "You won the war. We accept defeat. Now we discuss the terms of surrender and move forward." Young-Ho leaned back in his chair. "Before we discuss moving forward, I want you all to understand something. For 85 years, my species suffered. Children died. Cities went dark. Families were torn apart. And all of that happened because you decided we were too dangerous to be free." He stood up and walked around the table slowly. "But here's the interesting part. In those 85 years, we didn't become less dangerous. We became more dangerous. We innovated in ways you never imagined. We built weapons you abandoned. We developed tactics you forgot. We turned the cage you built into a forge that made us stronger." The therm representative flickered. "We accept responsibility for our mistake. We offer reparations, technology transfers, territory, whatever you require." "What I require," Young-Ho said, stopping behind the Vrix Queen's chair, "is for you to understand what you did, not as policy, not as history, but as living memory that you'll carry forward." He placed his hand on the table and a holographic display appeared. It showed Earth during the darkest years of the quarantine. Children with hollow eyes, empty cities, people fighting over scraps, medical facilities without medicine, schools without power. "This is what you created," Young-Ho said. "Every delegate in this room voted for this. Your species watched us suffer and did nothing. Some of you even studied us, used our genetic information while we died." The Kelth delegate's suit speaker crackled. "We cannot undo the past." "No," Young-Ho agreed. "But you can pay for it. And you will." He returned to his seat and pulled up a document. "These are humanity's terms. First, complete dissolution of the Galactic Council as it exists. The old power structure is finished." Several delegates tried to speak at once, but Young-Ho raised his hand for silence. "Second, reparations. Each species that voted yes will pay based on your ability, technology, resources, manufacturing capacity. You'll help rebuild Earth and establish human colonies. This will take 50 years minimum." 50 years? The Vrix Queen clicked in outrage. "That's less than what you gave us," Young-Ho cut her off. 50 years is mercy, considering we suffered for 85. "Should I reconsider?" The Queen fell silent. "Third," Young-Ho continued, "no species may ever restrict another species' access to space. No more cages, no more quarantines. If you have a problem with a species, you deal with it diplomatically or not at all." He pulled up another document. "Fourth, human observers will be placed on each of your homeworlds. They'll monitor your governments, your militaries, your policies. If we see you trying to rebuild the old power structure, there will be consequences." "You're making us into prisoners," the therm representative said. "No," Young-Ho replied. "We're making you accountable. There's a difference." Tajan stood near the door, listening to the terms being laid out. He was a Marine, 32 years old, with scars from boarding actions during the war. He had fought Vrix soldiers in the narrow corridors of their ships. He had seen friends die, but he had also seen human Marines pull wounded Vrix from burning vessels and provide medical aid. After the conference, Tajan found Young-Ho in a private office. "Mr. President, can I speak freely?" "Always," Young-Ho said. "The terms are harsh." Some people wanted harsher. They wanted the Vrix extinct. The therm scattered. They wanted revenge. "I know," Young-Ho said. "I wanted revenge too. Part of me still does." "But you're not taking it," Tajan said. "Why?" Young-Ho was quiet for a moment. "Because revenge is easy. Building something better is hard. If we exterminate the Vrix, what do we become? If we turn the therm into refugees, how are we different from the council that caged us?" He stood and walked to the window, looking out at the city lights. "We have power now, Tajan. Real power. The kind that can destroy civilizations or build new ones. And the choice we make now will define humanity for the next 1,000 years. So we show mercy?" Tajan asked. "We show strength," Young-Ho corrected. "Real strength. Not the kind that comes from weapons or ships. The kind that comes from being better than those who hurt you. The kind that builds instead of destroying. Back in the conference hall, the delegates were still arguing among themselves. Some wanted to refuse the terms and keep fighting. Others argued for acceptance. The Vrix Queen clicked her mandibles and thought. She had ruled for 300 years, leading her species with an iron claw. She had never surrendered. Never bowed. Never shown weakness, but she looked at the human guards by the door. Young soldiers with weapons they barely understood how to use 3 years ago. Now they had defeated the greatest military force in the galaxy in 3 months. I accept the terms, she clicked quietly. One by one, the other delegates agreed. They had no choice. The alternative was more war, and they had seen what happened when humanity fought. Later that night, Young Ho met with his military council. Sujin was there via hologram from her flagship. Nari appeared from her patrol zone. Other admirals and generals filled the room. They accepted, Young Ho reported. All 15 species. The terms are locked in. What about enforcement? Sujin asked. The Vrix will try to rebuild their military. The Therm will look for loopholes. Let them try, Young Ho said. We'll have observers everywhere. And more importantly, we've changed the galaxy's perception. The younger species watched us break free and win a war. They saw us show restraint when we could have shown cruelty. They're looking to us for leadership now, not to the old council. Nari's image nodded. My intelligence reports confirm it. 3 species have formally requested human protection. 12 more have asked for trade agreements. The old power structure is dead. We just need to make sure nothing worse replaces it. That's the hard part, Young Ho said. Tearing down an empire is easy. Building something better takes work. He looked around the room at the officers and advisors. We won the war in 3 months. But the real test is what comes next. We have to build a new galactic order, one based on freedom, not fear, on justice, not power, and we have to do it while the old powers watch and wait for us to fail. Sujin smiled on the hologram. Mr. President, we broke through a barrier that was supposed to be unbreakable. We built a fleet from nothing. We won a war against impossible odds. Building a better galaxy? That's just another impossible task. And humans are good at those. 5 years had passed since the war ended. Jiwoo sat in her office on the orbital station above Earth, reviewing the latest reports from across the galaxy. As Young Ho's chief negotiator, she had spent those 5 years traveling from world to world, settling disputes, establishing trade agreements, and slowly building the new galactic order. She was 41 years old now, with dark hair pulled back in a simple style. Her desk was covered with data pads showing information from 1,000 different worlds. Population numbers, resource reports, diplomatic incidents. The work never stopped. Ambassador Jiwoo, her assistant, called from the door. The Galactic Assembly is ready. They're waiting for you. Jiwoo stood and straightened her formal jacket. The dark blue fabric carried Earth's flag on one shoulder and the new Galactic Federation symbol on the other. A circle of stars representing all the species that had joined the new order, 43 species so far. More were applying every month. She walked through the station corridors toward the assembly hall. 5 years ago, this station hadn't existed. Now it was the center of galactic government, a massive structure built by combined effort from dozens of species. The assembly hall was enormous. Rows of seats curved in a great circle, each section designed for different species' needs. Insectoid Vrix could perch comfortably. Crystalline Therm had charging platforms. Gaseous Kelth had pressure-controlled chambers, and humans sat in simple chairs that looked almost primitive compared to the alien accommodations. But those simple chairs were at the center of the circle, right where everyone could see them. Jiwoo took her seat beside Seojun, humanity's chief military strategist. He was 55 years old, with gray hair and the bearing of a man who had seen too much war. But his eyes were still sharp, always watching, always calculating. How's it looking? Jiwoo asked quietly. Nervous, Seojun replied. The Vrix delegation looks like they want to challenge the veto clause again. The Therm are worried about their reparation payments. Business as usual. The assembly fell silent as Minseo entered the hall. She was humanity's ambassador to the Galactic Assembly, 50 years old, with white streaks in her black hair and a presence that commanded attention. She had been Hana's assistant all those years ago, watching the original vote to cage Earth. Now she stood where the old council once ruled. The assembly recognizes all delegates, Minseo said, her voice carrying through the hall's acoustic system. We gather today to review the progress of the new Galactic Federation and address concerns from member species. The Vrix delegate stood immediately. It wasn't the Queen anymore. The Queen had been forced to abdicate after the war. This was a younger Vrix named Kirix, less arrogant but still proud. Ambassador Minseo, the Vrix coalition wishes to formally protest the 500-year veto power granted to humanity. It's been 5 years since the war ended. Our species has paid reparations, accepted human observers, and followed all terms of surrender. Surely it's time to grant us equal status in the assembly. Murmurs rippled through the hall. Other species watched to see how humanity would respond. Minseo looked at Kirix calmly. Delegate Kirix, let me remind you of some history. 85 years of quarantine, thousands of human deaths, genetic harvesting, all approved by a galactic council that your species led. 5 years is not enough time to forget that. But it's enough time to forgive, Kirix clicked. Or do humans plan to hold this over us forever? Seojun stood. Delegate Kirix, let's be clear about something. The veto power isn't punishment. It's insurance. We're making sure that what happened to us never happens again, to any species. He pulled up a holographic display. In the last 5 years, how many times has humanity used the veto? Twice. Both times to prevent majority votes that would have restricted a younger species' expansion rights. Both times we protected species that would have been caged just like we were. The display showed 2 votes. One had been a council attempt to quarantine a species called the Rin because they were too aggressive. The other had been a proposal to limit a species called the Beck to their home system because they were developing too quickly. Both times, humanity had said no. And because of the veto clause, no became the final answer. We're not holding power to hurt you, Shojin continued. We're holding power to protect others from becoming what we were. Prisoners in a cage of your making. Kirix sat down slowly. Around the hall, other delegates nodded. The Rin delegate, a species that looked like crystallized fire, stood and bowed toward the human section. The Rin people thank humanity for their protection. Without your veto, we would be caged today. Minseo waited for silence, then continued. This assembly was created to ensure freedom for all species. The right to travel. The right to expand. The right to develop without fear of imprisonment. Those rights are absolute, and humanity will protect them. For 500 years if necessary, or longer. A Therm delegate flickered with light. Ambassador, the Therm Collective wishes to address the reparation schedule. The payments are straining our economy. Jiwoo stood this time. Delegate Therm, your economy is strained because you spent 3,000 years exploiting younger species through unfair trade agreements. Humanity's auditors have reviewed your financial records. You can afford the reparations. You simply don't want to reduce your profit margins. The Therm flickered with what might have been embarrassment. However, Jiwoo continued, if you wish to discuss payment restructuring, my office is open. We're not interested in destroying your economy. We're interested in justice. There's a difference. The debate continued for hours. Species raised concerns. Humanity addressed them. Some issues were resolved immediately. Others were scheduled for future discussion. The assembly was slow, inefficient, and often frustrating, but it was fair. And that was new for the galaxy. After the session ended, Minseo stood on the observation deck of the station looking down at Earth. The planet was beautiful, green and blue and white. Hard to believe it had been a prison not so long ago. Young-ho joined her. He was 65 now, with white hair and a cane to help him walk. But his mind was still sharp. Long day? He asked. Always, Minseo replied. The Vrix want equal status. The Therm want to pay less. The Kelth want to expand into systems humanity claimed. Same arguments, different day. That's democracy, Young-ho said with a slight smile. Messy, loud, and slow. But it works, does it? Minseo asked. Sometimes I wonder if we're just delaying the inevitable. Eventually, humans will be outnumbered in the assembly. Eventually, species will forget what happened to us. The veto won't last forever. No, Young-ho agreed. But it doesn't need to last forever. It just needs to last long enough for the galaxy to change. For young species to grow up knowing freedom is normal. For old species to die off carrying their guilt with them. For everyone to understand that caging species isn't acceptable anymore. He looked at Earth below. We broke the chains, Minseo. But that was the easy part. Now we have to make sure the galaxy never builds chains again. That takes time. It takes patience. It takes being better than those who hurt us. Minseo was quiet for a moment. Hana would be proud. She always believed we could show them a better way. She was right, Young-ho said, but it's harder than she thought. Revenge is easy. Justice is hard. Building is harder than destroying. Across the galaxy, human ships patrolled the space lanes, not as conquerors, not as overlords. As guardians, they responded to distress calls from any species. They mediated disputes. They protected trade routes, and in quiet ways they were changing the galaxy's culture. Young beings from 100 worlds looked at humanity and saw something different. Not the brutal primitives the old council warned about. Not the savage warriors the Vrix feared. But a species that had been caged, broken free, and chosen mercy over revenge. It was inspiring. It was dangerous to the old power structures, and it was spreading. On a Vrix colony world, Kirix met privately with other young Vrix leaders. The humans beat us, she clicked. But they didn't exterminate us. They could have. They had every reason to. But they showed restraint. What's your point? Another Vrix asked. My point is that our old ways failed. The Council's ways failed. Maybe the humans have something to teach us. Maybe strength isn't just about military power. Maybe it's about being better than your enemies expect. Similar conversations happened across the galaxy. In Therm councils. In Kelth assemblies. In species humanity had never heard of. The old order was dying, not from war, but from obsolescence. 10 years after the war, Minseo stood before the Galactic Assembly once more. But this time she carried a different message. People of the galaxy, she said, her voice carrying to every seat. 10 years ago, humanity broke free from the cage you built. We won a war in 3 months. We could have burned the galaxy for what you did to us, but we chose differently. She paused, looking around the hall at the hundreds of delegates from dozens of species. We chose to build. We chose to create something better. Not just for humans, but for everyone. A galaxy where no species is caged, where no council decides who deserves freedom, where rights aren't granted by the powerful to the weak but protected by all for all. This isn't charity, she continued. This is justice. This is what the galaxy should have been all along, and humanity will defend it, not because we're better than you,